He walks home with his head down, backpack tight on both shoulders. Glasses cracked slightly at the edge. Blood dried at the corner of his lip. He didn't run, didn't cry, didn't scream when it happened. He just waited until it stopped. The street is quiet. One shoe is looser than the other. He walks slower, hoping the limp isn't obvious. Not because it hurts, because he doesn't want his dad to see. He gets home first, goes straight upstairs. Bathroom light on, door locked, tissue, water, hoodie pulled higher. He practices his voice before coming down. School was fine. I'm good. Nothing happened. Dinner's quiet. The man across from him doesn't talk much. Never did. But halfway through the meal, he puts his fork down, looks up, eyes calm, voice low. Who touched you? The boy freezes, shakes his head. No one. The man doesn't argue, doesn't ask again, just wipes his mouth and stands up. Some fathers call the school. Some call the police. Some don't call at all. Some just drive and take back what was taken. If you've ever watched someone take the hit, just to keep the peace, hit like and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? He wasn't the type to cause trouble. Lamar kept his head low, walked straight, and stayed out of everyone's business. He was the kind of kid who didn't make noise even when he had every reason to. 14, skinny, quiet. The kind of quiet that made other kids either pity him or pick on him. On a Thursday afternoon, when the streets were mostly empty and the sky hung heavy with a heat that made the pavement shimmer, Lamar was walking home alone from school. Backpack snug against his shoulders, hoodie a size too big, glasses slipping down the bridge of his nose with every other step. He walked with purpose, but not speed. He wasn't trying to go anywhere in a hurry. He just wanted to get home without being noticed. That didn't happen. 2 motorcycles roared around the corner. Loud, chrome-heavy machines that belonged more to an outlaw movie than a quiet suburb. The men on them wore black leather, sunglasses, and smirks that looked carved from bad habits. Colin and Randy, names Lamar didn't know, but would never forget. They weren't from the neighborhood. They didn't need to be. Guys like them didn't belong anywhere. They made wherever they parked feel smaller, more dangerous. When they spotted Lamar, they slowed down, circled once like wolves curious about a new scent. Then they stopped. Colin dismounted first, cracking his knuckles like it was muscle memory. Randy followed, dragging his boots on the asphalt, his face locked in a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Lamar didn't say anything. He just kept walking. Hey, Colin shouted. Lamar paused, not because he was scared, because it was better to stop than give them a reason to chase. Where you going, little man? Randy asked. Lamar looked up, met their eyes for a split second, and said, home. Just one word, calm, measured. But that was enough. Colin stepped forward. You look like one of them nerds. Got a calculator in that backpack. Randy laughed. Lamar didn't. He tried to step around them. They didn't let him. Randy stuck out a foot, tripping him. Lamar hit the ground hard. Palm scraped. Glasses fell. Colin stepped on them without looking down. Crack. Oops, he said. Guess you'll need a new prescription. Lamar didn't yell, didn't curse. He looked at the broken lenses and blinked. Hard. He was already trying to figure out how to explain this. Randy crouched beside him. Say something smart. Go on. Lamar shook his head. I'm not looking for trouble. Colin leaned over him. Too bad. Trouble's looking for you. And then they hit him. Not enough to break bones. Just enough to leave a mark. A black eye. A bleeding lip. A lesson. They didn't even run when it was done. They walked back to their bikes, revved the engines, and peeled out like they just finished a job. Lamar sat there for a minute, long enough to make sure they weren't coming back. Then he stood, wiped the blood from his mouth, picked up the crushed glasses, and walked home slower than before. He got there just after 6. The house was still. His dad's truck wasn't in the driveway, which meant he had time. Time to hide. Time to lie. Lamar went straight to the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the faucet to drown out the silence. He took off the hoodie, wincing as the fabric tugged against fresh bruises. He dabbed his lip with a tissue, washed his face, folded the hoodie inside out, and stuffed it at the bottom of the laundry bin. The glasses were beyond saving. so he wrapped them in a towel and slid them under the sink. Then he looked in the mirror and practiced. One expression, bored. Another, tired. One more, just normal. He rehearsed lines too. Some kids were being dumb. No big deal. I slipped getting off the bus. It's not as bad as it looks. Every version sounded thin, but he had to try. His dad wasn't the type to overreact. He was the type who said little and did a lot. Lamar knew that. Everyone who met his father knew that. Darnell didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just listened. And when he acted, things changed. Lamar didn't want things to change. Not again. He liked the quiet, the safety. Dinner was at 7 o'clock sharp. When his dad came home, he didn't ask where Lamar had been. He just walked in, washed his hands, and started cooking. Pork chops, rice, corn. The same meal he made every Thursday. Lamar sat at the table, trying not to wince when he chewed. His dad didn't look at him until halfway through the meal. Then he put his fork down. What happened? Lamar froze. Nothing. Darnell looked at him again, longer this time, eyes scanning, noticing, measuring. He didn't ask again. He just said, "Okay," and kept eating. That scared Lamar more than yelling ever could. The next morning came quietly. Lamar's face looked worse in the light. Bruise deepened, lips swollen. But his dad didn't say a word, didn't glance twice. He just poured coffee and read the news. At 8:03 a.m., Lamar left for school. Backpack slung low, hood up. As he walked out, he looked back once. Darnell was still at the table, watching, not moving, not blinking. By the time Lamar came home that afternoon, something felt different. The house was cleaner than usual. The living room had been swept. The shelf above the fireplace was empty. His dad's old watch, usually locked in a drawer, was gone. So were the gloves he never wore. Lamar asked, "Everything okay?" His dad nodded, just thinking. Lamar went upstairs. The quiet felt heavier than ever. At 4:38 a.m. the next morning, Lamar woke up to a sound he didn't recognize. Not shouting, not fighting, just movement. Steady, purposeful. He crept downstairs. Lights off. The door was open. Outside, parked along the curb, were 4 black vehicles. G63, Escalade, Land Cruiser, Top, all spotless, all still. Men in suits stood beside them. No badges, no logos, just presence. Darnell stood among them, dressed different. Coat long, hair slicked. He said nothing, just got into the lead car, and the convoy pulled away. Lamar didn't go back to sleep. He stood there, hand on the window, watching until the taillights disappeared. The street was empty again, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like something had been set in motion, something heavy, quiet, and final. The street was still dark when the convoy rolled out. 4 black SUVs glided down the block, like shadows stitched into the road. Their engines purred, not loud, not flashy, just undeniable. Each vehicle matched the others in tone, in height, in matte silence. This wasn't an errand. This was movement with purpose. In the first car, Darnell sat in the back seat. He didn't speak. He hadn't said a word since they left. He didn't ask for music, didn't reach for his phone. He just stared out the window, one hand resting on his knee, the other still and clenched. Darnell had once been a man people feared, not because he screamed, but because he didn't have to. His presence filled rooms like smoke, slow, suffocating, and everywhere. He'd left that life behind when Lamar was born. He'd put away the suits, the weapons, the ledger. He'd built a different world, quieter, safer. But the past doesn't forget. It waits. And sometimes it sends reminders wearing leather and riding bikes. Next to Darnell sat Joel, longtime enforcer. Older now, but still sharp. He held a tablet in his lap, street cams synced, timestamps marked. His voice was low when he finally spoke. Corner of 12th and Franklin. He said, "Yesterday, 7:42 p.m. This is them." Darnell leaned forward slightly as the video played. 2 motorcycles. Loud, fast, reckless. Then the frame paused, Lamar walking home. Alone, hoodie, glasses. Then the approach, the confrontation, the hit. Darnell didn't blink, didn't ask to rewind. He'd seen enough. Joel continued. Colin Randy Becker, both unaffiliated. No crew, they're wannabes. Think looking hard's the same as being hard. Got a few charges between them, all minor. No one's ever held them accountable. He paused. Until now. Darnell didn't respond. He just tapped the side of the door twice. That was the signal. The convoy adjusted course. The other cars fell into tighter formation. No headlights, just motion, like liquid steel flowing through the early morning silence. In the second SUV, Vico rode in the front seat. Younger, faster, louder, but not stupid. He kept a list in his notebook. Every time Darnell had shown restraint, every time someone crossed the line and still got a second chance. Vico called them favors. There were 15 on the list. He said it out loud. 15 times he let someone walk. The driver glanced at him. What's 16? Vico looked out the window. Not gonna be one. At 6:14 a.m., the convoy made its first stop. Metal Garage, an auto shop known for shady repairs and people who never ask questions. Joel walked in without knocking. Inside, two mechanics froze mid-conversation. Joel didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Colin been through here? One of them stammered. No, Joel raised a single finger. Pause. An honesty spilled out. Yeah. Yesterday. Said they roughed up some kid. Laughed about it. Called him a little punk with a calculator. Joel didn't comment. He just walked over to a hook on the wall and pulled down a leather vest. Colin's. Still damp. Still warm. Back outside. Joel handed the vest to Darnell. The man took it, folded it once, and stared at it like it was an artifact. Something unholy. At 7:02 a.m., they reach a dive bar. The kind of place that opens early and serves cheap lies with warm beer. Randy was there, alone, feet up on a table, half a drink on. When Darnell entered, the air shifted. Even the bartender froze mid-pour. Randy looked up, saw who it was, and the blood drained from his face. Shit, he muttered. He didn't stand, didn't fight. Darnell walked in silent, steady. No words, just presence. He tossed Colin's vest onto the table. Randy didn't touch it, didn't even blink. Darnell leaned in. You picked the wrong blood. Then he left. Outside, the convoy waited. Not rushed, not panicked. Just steady, like justice that knows it has all the time in the world. As they rolled away, Randy didn't move. He stayed in that chair long after the taillights disappeared. Back in the SUV, Joel said, You want us to collect the other one? Darnell shook his head. They're gonna come to us. He was right. Because when men like Darnell move, they don't chase. They position. They wait. And the street listens. At noon, a black Escalade idled across the street from a gas station where Colin liked to hang. No movement. Just parked. Colin noticed. But when he looked again 5 minutes later, it was gone. Replaced by a different black car. Same vibe. Same silence. He got nervous. By sunset, both Randy and Colin were back in the same motel they'd holed up in once before. This time they locked every window, drew every curtain, turned off every phone. And still someone knocked. Not loud. Just 3 taps. Even. Calm. Randy opened the door. No one was there. Just a box. Inside, Lamar's glasses. Fixed. Polished. Folded in a velvet pouch. Colin stared at them like they were cursed. Randy picked them up slowly. This ain't about hurting us, he said. It's about making sure we never forget. Colin asked, forget what? Randy answered, what kind of man you're messing with when you lay hands on his child? Because Darnell didn't need to raise a hand. The street would do it for him. Colin hadn't slept right in 3 nights. He wasn't counting sheep anymore. He was counting shadows. Every sound felt deliberate. Every silence too long. The motel room. They were holed up and smelled like stale air and old fear. He'd stopped turning on the TV. Even static made his skin crawl. The light bulb in the bathroom flickered once. He ripped it out with his bare hand. Across the room, Randy sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, eyes locked on the carpet like it might move if he blinked. Neither of them said much. Talking meant acknowledging that something was wrong, and neither of them wanted to say it out loud. They weren't just being watched. They were being cornered. Not physically, mentally, spiritually. On the second day, they tried to go out, just to get air, maybe a drink, maybe pretend the world was still normal. They didn't make it 2 blocks. At the corner gas station, a black G-Wagon was parked under the only working light. Clean. Still. A man leaned against it. Black gloves. No smile. Just a nod as they passed. Not hello. Not threat. Just acknowledgement. Like I still see you. Colin pulled Randy by the sleeve and turned around. They bought nothing. Walked back faster than they came. Back at the motel, they locked the door, pushed a chair under the knob, and turned off every light. At 3:07 a.m., someone knocked. 3 times. Calm, even. Colin held his breath. No voice followed. No footsteps after. He looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just the hallway. Empty. But at the floor, a manila envelope. Randy opened it with one hand, the other clenched. Inside were 3 things. A photo of Colin's mother's house, a copy of Randy's sealed juvenile record, and a page torn from Lamar's middle school yearbook. His face circled in red. Colin backed up against the wall, eyes wide. They know everything. Randy didn't answer. He just stared at the page. The next morning, they found a note on their windshield. Some people learn from pain. Others need to sit with it first. That was all it said. No threats. No demands. Just truth. Colin wanted to run again. Canada, Mexico, anywhere. He opened the motel phone book and started looking at maps, ferry schedules, Greyhound stops. Randy stayed still. We're not running. Colin laughed, high-pitched and cracking. We're not staying either. What, we just wait? Wait for what? For them to walk in and shoot us in our sleep? Randy shook his head. They're not going to shoot us. How do you know? Because if they wanted us gone, we'd be gone already. They're not here for revenge. They're here to teach. Colin slammed his fist against the wall. I didn't sign up for a F lesson. Randy stood up, slow, controlled. He looked at Colin with a tiredness that had weight. Then maybe you should have thought about that before we laid hands on a kid whose father used to settle scores without speaking. Colin looked away. He had nothing left to say. That night, Randy dreamed of footsteps. Not loud ones. Quiet, measured, pacing. When he woke up, he was sure he'd heard them above the ceiling. Except they were on the first floor, and the motel didn't have a second. By the 4th day, no one returned their calls. Not family, not old crew, not suppliers, not friends, not even strangers they used to buy smokes from. One old bartender they knew saw Randy walk in and turned his back. Bar's closed, he said. It was noon. It wasn't closed. Randy walked back out without a word. Colin's phone lit up once. A number he didn't know. He answered without thinking. A voice, calm and slow, said, "The worst thing we can give a man like you isn't death. It's time to think." Click. Colin dropped the phone. Randy didn't even flinch. That evening they left town. Not in a rush. Not in panic. But with the kind of exhaustion that comes from being hunted without claws. They drove until the sun dipped. Until they found an abandoned roadside diner and parked behind it. They didn't talk. Didn't turn on music. Just let the stillness crawl into their bones. At dusk, someone knocked on the passenger window. Not forceful. Just enough. Randy rolled it down. A hand passed through a small box. No face shown. No word said. Just the hand. And the box. They waited a full minute before opening it. Inside, Lamar's broken glasses now repaired. A copy of a school essay he'd written at age 9. Titled, "When I Grow Up?" A key. To what they didn't know. Randy stared at the paper. The essay was short. Only 1 paragraph. It read, "When I grow up, I want to be the kind of man who doesn't hit back, but makes sure no one ever hits again." Colin sank into his seat, hands over his face. "This kid," he whispered, "he's not like us." Randy closed the box. "No, he's better." By day 5, Colin's hands were shaking every time he lit a cigarette. Not from the nicotine, not from the caffeine, not from the hunger gnawing at his gut. It was the silence. The kind of silence that didn't mean no one was watching, but that everyone was. He stared out the motel window, pulling the curtain just enough to peek. The lot was empty, but that didn't mean anything. The G-Wagon could be down the block. The Escalade could be parked across the street. Engine off, lights off, but eyes on. Randy sat on the bed, behind him, scrolling through his phone. No notifications. No missed calls. No one was calling. The battery was down to 14%. He didn't bother charging it. Who was there to reach? Nobody had returned their calls. Old contacts gone. Their dealer from last year had changed numbers. The mechanic they knew in Philly said, "Don't call me again." That bartender from the east side hung up mid-sentence. No one wanted to be near them. Like whatever was following them might be contagious. Colin finally dropped the curtain. "It's like we died and nobody told us." Randy didn't respond. He hadn't said much since the envelope with Lamar's photo, since the essay, since the box with the key. Colin sat down, hands in his hair. "You think the keys for a locker? A car? A message?" Randy replied without looking up. "It's for memory." Colin stared. "What the hell does that even mean?" Randy looked him in the eye, voice low. "It means we're not being punished. We're being preserved. Like examples. Like warnings." Colin laughed, but it sounded cracked. "You're losing it." "No," Randy said. "I already lost it. I lost it when I thought laying hands on some quiet black kid made me strong. I lost it when I let you egg me on. I lost it when I forgot what real men look like." "And what?" Colin snapped. "Darnell's a real man now. Because he's got cars and guys in suits." "No," Randy said. "Because he didn't touch us." The silence returned and stayed. That night, Colin had a dream. He was 12. His father was yelling. His hands were in fists. But Colin couldn't hear anything. The entire world was muted. All he saw was the mouth moving, the fists clenched, the eyes filled with a kind of disgust that burned more than hatred. Then the dream shifted. He was on the street. Same night, he and Randy hit Lamar. Except this time, Lamar didn't fall. He stood, still quiet, still small. But he looked straight at Colin. No fear, no pain, just disappointment. The kind that doesn't fade. Colin woke up soaked in sweat. Randy was already awake, sitting in the chair, staring at the box with Lamar's glasses. Can't sleep? Can't forget. That morning, they tried to drive out of town. Didn't even make it to the freeway. At the on-ramp, traffic cones blocked their lane. Not construction. Just one cone. One man. One vehicle. Black Suburban. The man didn't raise a gun. Didn't speak. He just pointed behind them. They reversed. Back down the ramp. The man didn't follow. He didn't have to. They went to the diner. Not to eat. Just to sit. The waitress walked over, holding a pot of coffee. Paused. Looked at Randy. Then Colin. Then said, "We're not serving today." Colin opened his mouth to argue. She placed the pot down, not in anger, but in finality, and walked away. They left without saying a word. They stopped at a park, just for air, somewhere to breathe that didn't stink of motel soap and fear. A bench was open. They sat. 2 minutes later, a man joined them. Black suit, clean shoes. Watch that caught the light. He didn't look at them, just spoke. "You're not the first people Darnell's loved." Colin stiffened. The man continued. "You're just the first ones to make him remember who he used to be." Randy asked, "So what happens now?" The man smiled. "Nothing." He stood. "Nothing happens. And that's your punishment." They checked out that night. Left cash on the table. Drove with no plan. Randy said, "You know we can't run forever." Colin nodded. "We gotta find him." "Lamar?" "Yeah." "And do what?" "Not talk." "Then what?" Colin looked out the window. "Just let him see us. That we know. That we'll never forget." Colin and Randy didn't know where they were going. Only that they couldn't keep circling the same blocks anymore. Guilt had no destination. And neither did they. The air outside felt thicker. Even the wind seemed to avoid them. Every place they stopped to catch their breath seemed to recognize them. Like the buildings, the sidewalks, the sky had all been informed. They drove in silence for over an hour. Randy's fingers tapped lightly on the dashboard. Colin behind the wheel didn't speak. The GPS was off. The map app didn't help. Nothing digital could guide them now. They weren't searching for a location. They were searching for something else. Something heavier. Back at the motel, Colin couldn't take it anymore. He started throwing things. The lamp, the chair, the coffee pot, shouting at ghosts, cursing at silence. "I get it. Okay. We screwed up. We did something dumb. Is that what you want? Some confession? Some apology? What do you people want from me?" The room said nothing, but someone knocked on the door. Randy opened it. No one was there, just a small wooden box. Inside, Lamar's hoodie, washed, folded, a tag sewn into the collar now. One word, unbroken. Colin dropped to his knees, not from pain, from understanding. A school bell rang in the distance as they passed a middle school. Colin slowed. "You think that's his?" he asked. Randy shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. Colin pulled over anyway. They sat there for 20 minutes, watching kids pour out the doors, backpacks slung over shoulders, voices light and free. None of them were Lamar. That wasn't the point. The point was seeing that freedom, that lightness they had tried to take from someone, and realizing how rare it was. "Look at them," Colin muttered. "They don't even know how good they have it." Randy replied, "That's the point of childhood. You're not supposed to." Colin didn't say anything else. He just turned the key and drove. By late afternoon, they stopped at a diner on the edge of a quiet suburb. It wasn't familiar. That was the point. They didn't want to be anywhere that had a memory attached. The server walked over. Older woman, sharp eyes, wore her tiredness like armor. "Coffee?" she asked. Randy nodded. Colin said, "Yeah, black." She returned with 2 mugs, steam rising like smoke signals. On the rim of Colin's mug sat a folded napkin. No writing, no message, just something tucked underneath. Colin lifted it carefully. It was a photo of Lamar, not bleeding, not bruised, just standing in front of a bookshelf, reading. The light hit his glasses just right. He looked calm, still. Behind him, in the background, just barely in frame, a hand, firm on his shoulder, brown skin, gold watch, no face. They didn't need one. Randy looked at Colin. "They want us to see who he tried to break." Colin whispered, "And who put him back together?" They didn't finish their coffee. They left cash on the table and walked out. The world outside felt smaller, more detailed, like someone had turned the sharpness up on reality. They walked, no destination. And then Colin saw it. A park, swings, kids, mothers, and at the far bench, a boy, alone, reading. Colin's heart skipped. He grabbed Randy's sleeve. "That's him." Randy froze. He didn't ask how Colin knew. He just followed. They didn't approach fast, didn't call his name. They walked like men approaching a grave, with respect, with hesitation, with fear. Lamar looked up before they got too close. He didn't flinch, didn't move, just closed the book and watched. His eyes were calm, not forgiving, not afraid, just present. That was worse. Colin opened his mouth, but no words came. Randy took 1 step forward, then stopped, because Darnell was standing behind the bench. They hadn't seen him, but he was there, like he always was, arms crossed, eyes sharp, posture straight. He didn't move, didn't interrupt, didn't threaten. He just watched. Colin raised his hands slowly, not to plead, just to show they were empty. He nodded once, not a greeting, not a gesture of peace, just acknowledgement, like, "I see, and I see what I did." Randy followed suit. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. They stood there, 2 grown men, wordless before a boy they couldn't break, and a father who didn't need to lift a finger. Then Lamar stood. He picked up his book, walked toward them. No anger, just clarity. He stopped a few feet away, looked them in the eye one by one, then said, "You didn't take anything from me. You just showed me what not to become." He turned, walked back to the bench, sat beside his father. Darnell never looked at them again. He just placed his hand back on Lamar's shoulder, like it had always been there, like it never left. Colin and Randy didn't cry, but something inside them broke. Not like glass, like ice. Slow, permanent. That night, they drove back to the motel, packed in silence. Didn't speak until morning. Then Randy said, "Where to?" Colin didn't answer, because the road doesn't give directions when you're not running anymore. It just waits and listens. Colin didn't remember the drive home, not because he was tired, because the road didn't matter. He could have driven for 100 miles and still seen Lamar's eyes every time he blinked. Not angry, not afraid, just quiet, present, unmoved. That's what broke him. Not fists, not threats, but the look of a boy who had every reason to hate and chose not to flinch. Randy sat in the passenger seat, one hand gripping the door. He hadn't said anything since the park. Not when they left. Not when they passed the diner. Not when Colin pulled into the parking lot of their old hideout garage. He finally said, "We're ghosts now." Colin nodded. No one had to kill them. They'd already disappeared. In the days that followed, everything was different. Subtle, but undeniable. The air felt like it had eyes. The shops that used to serve them closed early. The mechanic who used to fix their bikes didn't have parts anymore. One friend crossed the street when he saw Randy. Another just stared through Colin like he wasn't there. They weren't being hunted. They were being erased. Colin tried to distract himself. He fixed up an old bike. Something small, simple, just to keep his hands busy. But every time he tightened a bolt, he thought of Lamar's hands. The way they held that book. Calm, certain. He used to believe strength came from noise. Now he understood silence could carry more weight than any scream. Randy, meanwhile, started writing. At first, it was just scribbles in a notebook, then pages, then full letters. He never sent them to Lamar, to Darnell, to himself. They stayed in a drawer, unopened, unread. That was the point. The act of writing wasn't for forgiveness. It was to acknowledge. One morning, a letter arrived. No stamp, no postmark, just sitting at their doorstep. Inside, a photo of Lamar, wearing a medal. Science competition, first place. Below it, one sentence. He's not watching you, but he'll never forget what you taught him about the world. Randy folded the letter carefully, placed it in the same drawer as the others. Colin didn't ask to read it. He already knew what it said, even if the words were different. They started to notice other things, too. A mural on the side of a corner store. A boy in a hoodie holding a book. No name, no title. Just the eyes. Calm, focused. Graffiti under a bridge. Unbroken. A flyer posted on a church door. How to talk to your child about being seen and unseen. Lamar wasn't telling a story. The city was. One night, Colin went for a walk. No destination, just movement. He passed a group of teens laughing, running from a basketball court. One of them bumped into him. The kid stopped, apologized. Colin nodded and kept walking. He didn't flinch. He didn't snap. He didn't become the man he once was. And that, in itself, was something. Meanwhile, Randy attended a meeting. Not court-mandated, not public. Just 8 men in folding chairs talking about who they used to be. When it was his turn, Randy said, "I thought I was tough. Turns out I was just loud." He didn't cry, but when he left the room, he walked a little slower. That too was something. Months passed. Seasons turned. They didn't see Lamar again. Didn't expect to. But one day, while driving past a community center, Colin spotted a bulletin board. Photos from fundraiser. And there, in the bottom corner, Lamar, laughing, holding books, surrounded by kids. His hoodie had a pin. Mentor? Colin pulled over. He didn't go in, just sat in the car, looking, not at Lamar, at the kind of world Lamar now belonged to. And they didn't. Randy got a job, loading trucks at a dock. Heavy work, quiet work. No one there cared about his past. They cared about whether he showed up on time, whether he carried his weight. And he did. Every day, he kept his head down, not out of shame, out of choice. Some nights, they sat on the garage roof, didn't drink, didn't talk much, just watched the sky. Once Colin said, "Do you think they'll ever forget us?" Randy replied, "They already did." Colin nodded. "Good." Then he added, "Do you think he'll forget?" Randy shook his head. That's not the point. It had been 8 months since the park. 8 months since Lamar looked them in the eye and said everything without raising his voice. Since then, Colin and Randy had kept their heads down. No more bikes, no more leather, no more trouble, just work, bills, days that blurred into nights. They weren't trying to rebuild their names. They were just trying not to add more shame to them. And for a while it worked, until the city called them back. Not by name, by memory. It started with a video, a high school hallway, a kid small, alone, being cornered by 3 others, pushed, laughed at, Nothing new. But someone filmed it this time. Posted it. Captioned it. Guess who learned from Lamar? It went viral. Not because of the bullying, but because of what happened next. The kid didn't fight back. He didn't cry. He didn't run. He just looked at them, steady, clear, and said, "I'm not afraid of you. I've read your kind before." That line stuck. The comments exploded. That's a Lamar kid. Same energy, same calm. The legacy lives. Colin saw the clip on a borrowed phone during lunch break. He watched it twice, then a third time. Then he put the phone down and didn't speak for the rest of the shift. That night, Randy knocked on his door, held up the same phone. "You saw it?" Colin nodded. Randy sat down. "What do we do?" Colin shrugged. "It's not our fight." "Yeah," Randy said, "but it feels like a shadow of ours." Silence. Then Colin said, "We weren't the last ones who thought a quiet kid was an easy target." The next day, they stood outside the high school, not to talk to the kid, not to confront the bullies, just to see, to remember. And they weren't the only ones. There were others, former punks, old gang associates, people who once made noise, now standing quietly, arms crossed, back straight, not protecting, just witnessing. A silent line between what was and what would never be allowed again. Randy spotted someone familiar in the crowd. It was Joel, Darnell's right hand, still in black, still unreadable. Joel nodded at them once, then looked away. He wasn't here for conversation. He was here for presence. So were they? Inside, the school held a town hall. Parents, staff, kids. Colin and Randy didn't go in. They waited outside. When the doors opened, people walked out quieter than they came in. Not defeated, just thinking. Lamar arrived at the end. Not escorted, not dramatic. Just Lamar. Same walk, same hoodie, same calm. The bullied kid spotted him first. Ran over, hugged him. Lamar smiled, said something too soft to hear, but it made the kid laugh. That was enough. Colin looked at Randy. He's not trying to be a hero. Randy nodded. That's why he is one. Later that week, a mural was painted on the side of the school. Not of Lamar, of a dozen kids, books in hands, chins up, and a phrase painted above them. We don't yell, we stand. Colin drove past it every day. He started parking nearby, just for a minute, just to look. He never took a photo. Some things you don't save on a phone. You save in your gut. One evening, as he sat watching the mural, a kid walked by, recognized him. The kid paused, pointed. You're one of the guys, right? Colin didn't flinch, didn't lie. Yeah. The ones who heard him? Colin nodded. Yeah. The kid blinked. And now you stand here? Colin looked at the wall. Yeah. The kid said nothing else. Just walked away, but didn't run, didn't look back with fear. And somehow that meant everything. Back at the garage, Randy had started building benches. Wood, nails, no plans, just crafting something with his hands that wasn't meant to destroy. He built one, then another, donated them to parks. Each one had the same message carved into the backrest. This seat remembers. No one asked who made them. No one needed to. On the anniversary of the original incident, a letter came in the mail from Lamar. It was short, handwritten, no return address. It read, I don't carry hate, I carry memory. And sometimes that's heavy enough. Colin framed it. Randy didn't say anything when he saw it, just nodded, then picked up a hammer, started on a new bench. There's a difference between attention and impact. Colin learned that the day a 7th grader he didn't know handed him a flyer. No words, just an image, a backpack on the ground, a pair of glasses next to it, and the phrase, it didn't end with him. It started with us. The flyer was for a community event, not a rally, not a protest, a workshop for kids, for parents, for anyone who wanted to understand what it meant to speak when it mattered, and how to listen when it's hardest. Randy found a matching flyer on the bench he built 2 weeks earlier, the one that said, this seat remembers. He didn't ask how it got there. He already knew. The workshop took place in a rec center near the edge of the neighborhood, the same one Colin used to skip school near. The one Randy had once been thrown out of for fighting. They showed up early, not as organizers, not as guests, just as bodies in the room. The room was full by 10 a.m. Kids with shy eyes and notebooks too big for their backpacks. Parents who looked like they carried tiredness in their shoulders. And faces, old and new, that all seemed to understand one thing, that silence is a language, and we all speak it until someone teaches us better. The first speaker was a teacher, middle-aged, tough voice, kind eyes. She didn't talk about discipline or grades. She talked about safety, and how safety doesn't just mean locked doors or metal detectors. It means someone looking at you when you say you're not okay, someone believing you before you break. She ended with a quote from Lamar, not printed, not famous, just something he'd said during a tutoring session. Some kids don't cry because they're strong. Some kids don't cry because no one's listening anyway. Colin felt his throat tighten. Randy rubbed his wrist where his old tattoo used to be. Neither of them moved. Then a girl stood up. Couldn't have been more than 12. Braids, hoodie, voice small but sharp. She talked about being pushed in a hallway. Not hard, just enough. And how no one said anything. Not the kids. Not the teacher who saw it. Not even her best friend. She said she didn't care. That it didn't matter. That she was fine. But when she got home that night, she threw her backpack in the closet and didn't eat dinner. She said she found Lamar's story online by accident. Read it 3 times. Then went to school the next day and sat next to someone else who was always alone. I didn't fix anything, she said. But I didn't disappear either. The room was silent. The kind of silence that feels like it's leaning forward, listening, learning. After the workshop, people mingled. No music, just voices. Randy stood near the back. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. A boy walked up to him. Didn't introduce himself. Just said, "My uncle used to say your name like it meant something." Randy replied, "Now it means I show up." The boy nodded and left. Outside, Colin saw Lamar, sitting on a bench under a tree. Same hoodie, same calm. Older now, not taller, but deeper, more grounded. Colin didn't approach, but Lamar looked up, met his gaze, and nodded. That was all. That was enough. Later that week, a school district announced a new program, Peer Advocates, Conflict De-escalation. Every school with 3 trained students, each trained by Lamar once a week. No press release, no ribbon cutting, just quiet strategy and quiet impact. One afternoon, Randy stood outside the garage. A young man walked by, tattoos, boots, leather jacket. He stopped, looked at Randy. "You used to run with the heavy hands, right?" Randy replied, "I used to." The young man nodded. "Thought about throwing a kid into a locker last week." Randy raised an eyebrow. "Did you?" The man shrugged, saw a bench. "One of yours." Sat there 15 minutes. Forgot why I was mad. Randy didn't smile. He just said, "Good, that's the point." That night, he carved another message into a new bench. Sometimes survival looks like sitting down. At a bus stop, Colin overheard 2 teenagers talking. "My brother says Lamar doesn't even talk much." "Yeah, that's the thing. He doesn't need to. He just shows up." They laughed, then paused. One added, "I want to be the kind of person who makes people pause before they pick on someone." Colin looked away, not because he was ashamed, because he didn't want them to see his eyes water. In the background, no one ever mentioned the convoy again. The black SUVs, the silence, the man in the coat. Darnell was never interviewed, never filmed. But sometimes, when someone tried to test a boundary, to lay hands where they didn't belong, a car would appear down the street, parked, still, no logo, just memory, and that was all it took. They never made a statue for Lamar. No parade, no headline that screamed his name. But in coffee shops, teachers' lounges, locker rooms, and late-night car rides, his story kept surfacing, softly, like a name you heard once in a whisper, but never forgot. It wasn't about the punch that never came. It was about the gaze that never blinked. And that was enough. At a public school board meeting, a parent raised a hand. "I'd like to propose we expand the Peer Advocate program." The room shifted. Another parent, skeptical, said, "And who's paying for that?" The first parent didn't flinch. My son hasn't been in a fight all year. Why? Because he says he's got a Lamar in his school. Silence. Motion passed. Colin took the long route to work now. Past the mural. Past the bench Randy had built 3 weeks earlier. Past the fence where a kid had once been cornered. The same fence now had a new sign on it. This spot used to be fear. Now it's memory. He'd pause for a second every time. Not out of shame anymore, but ritual. Like penance that wasn't punishment. Just discipline. Randy joined a weekend program. Not to talk about himself, but to help kids build things with their hands. Birdhouses, shelves, skateboard ramps. One afternoon, a boy with a chipped tooth asked, "You used to be someone, right?" Randy said, "I still am." The kid squinted. "But not scary anymore?" Randy chuckled. "Depends who's asking." The kid grinned. "Good. I don't like scary." "Neither do I," Randy said. "Not anymore." Lamar didn't post on social media, didn't do interviews, but his name kept appearing in school essays, middle school debates, college scholarship applications. One essay read, "He didn't fight. He didn't run. He stood. So I knew I could too." The writer won. She didn't list her GPA. Just one sentence in her application. "I grew up in Lamar City." On a Tuesday, Colin got a letter from a middle school counselor. Typed, professional, but personal. It said, "I've seen you, Mr. Becker. You stand near the fence. You think no one notices. But they do, and it matters." He folded it twice, kept it in his wallet. Randy went to a barbershop one day. Hadn't been in a while. Place had new paint, new faces. But the owner was the same. Looked up, froze, then pointed to the no fighting sign on the wall. "That started because of you." Randy nodded. "I know." They shook hands. The cut was free, somewhere across town. A young boy was pushed in the hallway. He didn't fall, didn't cry, just stood. Another kid, a girl, stepped in, stood beside him. Didn't say much, just looked the bully in the eye. They backed off. Later the boy asked her, "Why'd you help me?" She shrugged. "My sister told me. If you see someone standing alone, stand closer." At a school fundraiser, someone read a poem, anonymous, titled Convoy. No mention of cars, no names, just lines like, "The loudest people I know never raise their voices. The sharpest justice didn't wear a badge." The boy didn't hit back, but the world did just enough. People clapped. No one asked who wrote it. Lamar was in the back row. He didn't clap, just smiled, then left. Darnell didn't return to the garage. He didn't need to. But sometimes his car would show up on a side street, parked. No one saw him get in or out. But Colin would see the lights blink once, like a nod, like a reminder. Still here, still watching, still silent. One day, Randy found Lamar walking home from a tutoring session. They crossed paths by chance. No convoy, no shadow, just two people on the same sidewalk. Randy stepped aside. Lamar paused. Randy said, "You good?" Lamar said. Randy nodded. Then Lamar added, "You don't have to disappear. Just don't forget." And then he kept walking. Randy stood there long after he was gone. Not because he was stunned, because he finally understood. Years passed, not in a blur, but in quiet clicks, like the steady turning of a page. Lamar didn't become famous. He didn't start a movement. He didn't even graduate with a speech. But he kept showing up. That was enough. At 20, he still walked with the same calm, same hoodie, same pace. But now he carried more than books. He carried memory. The kind that never gets heavy because you never set it down. The kind you don't brag about, just build around. He didn't talk much about what happened. Didn't call himself a survivor. Didn't label Darnell a protector or a ghost. Didn't need to. Some names don't live in headlines. They live in pause, in silence, in the decision to stand instead of swing. Colin worked nights now. Maintenance. Cleaning things other people broke. Replacing bulbs people smashed. He liked it. The rhythm. The quiet. It gave him room to think without having to speak. Sometimes he'd pass a kid in the hallway. Headphones in, eyes low. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. Once. Small. Like a promise. The same kind Lamar once gave him with a single glance. Randy got arthritis in his left wrist. Stopped building benches. Started drawing instead. Crude sketches. Buildings. Faces. Hands all open. Never clenched. He didn't show them to anyone. He just kept them in a folder. Labeled, "Proof I changed." No one really knew what happened to Darnell. He vanished the same way he moved. Quiet, fast, without the need for goodbyes. Some said he went south. Others said he took one final job, then disappeared. A few believed he never left at all, that he was still watching, still waiting, still ready, but never needed. Because sometimes the threat of a man is more powerful than the man himself, especially when that man learned to raise a son who never had to inherit his fire. One summer, Lamar was invited to speak, not at a big event, just a youth group, 10 kids, 3 folding chairs too short. He said no, then changed his mind. He stood there in front of them, no stage, no mic, just presence, and said, "I used to think silence was weakness. Now I think it's preparation. When you don't react right away, you're building something inside, something strong." He paused, "So don't rush to swing. Build, wait, watch. And when the time comes, show them who raised you." That was it. No applause, just nods, deep ones, like they weren't nodding at him, but at something inside themselves. That fall, a fight almost broke out in a cafeteria. 2 kids, loud, ready. Another student stepped between them. Didn't yell, didn't shove, just stood still. The moment shattered before it could spark. The principal asked afterward, "Where'd you learn that?" The student replied, "From someone who never needed to raise his voice." Colin heard about it days later, on a break, mopping a hallway. A teacher told the story in passing. Didn't know the kid's name. Didn't know Lamar's either. Colin smiled, didn't say a word. Randy saw Lamar once more, years later, at a bus stop, cold afternoon. No one around. They made eye contact. Randy nodded. Lamar nodded back. They didn't speak, but Randy reached into his coat and handed him something wrapped in cloth. Lamar opened it later. A drawing, rough lines, of a boy standing in the street. No bruises, no tears, just standing. Behind him a shadow, tall, silent, shaped like a man in a long coat. On the bottom corner, "You were always bigger than what happened." Lamar folded it once, put it in his bag, kept walking. The world didn't stop turning. People still got hurt, still lashed out, still misjudged silence as weakness. But sometimes, someone remembered. And when they did, they stood, not to fight, not to shout, but to say, "I know how this ends, and I'm not letting it start." In the end, there was no justice system that closed the story. No medals, no convictions, no fame, just legacy, built from pause, from presence, from a father who didn't chase revenge, just made space for dignity, and a son who chose to carry memory instead of vengeance. If you've ever seen a quiet person hold a room, if you've ever known someone who didn't fight back, but made you never swing again, if you've ever watched power walk away, not because it couldn't act, but because it didn't have to, hit like, drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from, because some stories don't end with noise. They echo until someone else is brave enough to listen.